Hello, this is John Barber. It's November 22nd, 2020, the 57th anniversary of the murder of President John F. Kennedy. I'm certain that a lot of you have had this experience where you're engaged in a meaningful conversation with somebody and you think you're making a contribution and you think you're making points and you feel good about yourself. Then you get home and you suddenly say to yourself, "Oh God, I forgot the most important thing." I had that same experience yesterday, and I'm going to make up for it now. Yesterday, I was honored to be a part of a scholarly 5-man panel. It was the Zoom Kappa Conference for the year 2020, headed by the founder and head panelist, Dr. Cyril Wecht. Dr. Cyril Wecht, to me, is the last surviving standalone hero when it comes to the murder of President John F. Kennedy. He is the only professional, loud voice now claiming and still claiming for years and years that the Warren Commission was a fraud, not an investigation, and that no lone nut killed John F. Kennedy. He stands alone in a pantheon occupied by only one other person. That other person is Jim Garrison, a person that Dr. Wecht dearly admired and tried desperately to help. The panel all got to speak after the screening of our film, The American Media and the Second Assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and they spoke brilliantly and passionately. I got to speak last, but I did not address anyone watching the conference, and I did not address any of my fellow panelists. I only talked to Dr. Cyril Wecht, my hero. I quoted Shakespeare, my favorite writer, and Jim Garrison's favorite writer, second, of course, is Mark Twain. I pointed out to Dr. Wecht that in Hamlet, someone asked Hamlet, "What are you reading?" And Hamlet says, "Words, words, words." But Hamlet realized that words, even his words, were absolutely meaningless without the native resolution of action. I pointed out to Dr. Wecht that we have had over 200 conferences in 50 years since the murder of John F. Kennedy, held in every city in this country. And what have these conferences produced, Dr. Wecht? Words, words, words. Now, quite honestly, a lot of those words are inspiring and indeed informative. But what action have they led to? They have led to absolutely no action at all. I told Dr. Wecht that he is the only person on the planet and the only person in this country who has the moral cachet of a Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King tried to organize the Poor Person's March under Washington, D.C. in the 60s to end the fake Vietnam War, and more importantly, to get a redistribution of wealth equally amongst his citizens. But Dr. King never got to take that march because they murdered him also. Dr. Wecht is 89 years of age. I suggested that for his 90th birthday, he organize a Truth Seekers March to the Robert F. Kennedy Justice Department, where the House Select Committee turned over what they described as a conspiracy to the Justice Department for further investigation. Dr. Wecht knows that we now live in a sadly celebrity soap culture, and that people will follow only celebrities. He is the only celebrity with the stature to be able to accomplish and implement such a march. And if he did, thousands and thousands of people would follow him. And once he started this march, The other truly important investigators into the murder of John Kennedy, especially Oliver Stone, who made the magnificent film JFK, and whose film is responsible for the Records Assassinations Act. Oliver Stone's great film made it possible for me to make my 2 definitive documentaries about the murder of John Kennedy. Oliver Stone has 1 million followers. Perhaps a lot of them from around the world would join Dr. Wecht. And the same might happen for the former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, for years a very loud critic of the Warren Report, a person who had very important people on his program frequently to talk about the fraud that was the Warren Commission and its investigation. Because if that cold case gets into a courtroom, it will answer and solve every single question anyone has ever asked about the murder of John Kennedy or Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King or maybe John Lennon, and may even lead to something about 911, because every problem that has happened to America happened since the murder of John F. Kennedy. At the end of my film, this is what I forgot to tell Dr. Wecht. At the end of my film, the American media, and the second assassination of President John F. Kennedy, I delivered a wanted poster of the 10 people alive 3 years ago who should be questioned in the murder of John F. Kennedy. And I was delivering it alone, at least I thought I was, until I got a call from my friend and contributor to the film, Brian Lloyd, an attorney. 3 years ago, when I announced that I was going to make a follow-up, a part 2 to the Garrison tapes, I got an email from this strange attorney, Brian Lloyd, in Washington, D.C., and he asked me to call him because if I was doing media, he could supply everything. So, of course, I called him. He told me since he was the age of 9 years, he gathered everything he could about the murder of John Kennedy that was in the media. He said he became a media junkie. He had films, he had newspaper reports, he had magazines, he had radio interviews, television interviews, he had everything. And he said, I will make it all yours. And he did. A large portion of what he gave us went into making the film the magnificent document that it is. So anyway, I'm at the Justice Department with my 10 most wanted poster. Now, of course, I'm not a television or celebrity star anymore, so I'm there alone, I thought. But guess who shows up? Brian Lloyd. He says, you're not doing this alone. And I said, listen, Brian, it's no big deal. You know, nobody's going to bother me. I'll just deliver it to them and I'll go home because I won't feel comfortable unless I get this off my chest. I mean, it's truly meaningless, except to me, because I know what the truth is and I'll just feel comfortable doing this. He said, John, you're not doing it alone. You're going to need an attorney. And if that doesn't work out, you're going to need a very funny cellmate. Well, we laughed and laughed, and we delivered the 10 Most Wanted poster to the Justice Department. Sadly, 2 months ago, Brian Lloyd died alone. His name is remembered, fortunately, as a major contributor to the film. You see his name at the end of the film. If you watch the name, pay special attention to it, because he was a very, very special person. And we talked often about politics, about which he knew everything. And he pointed out to me, he said, John, the American Revolution was not fought by 100% of its people. It was only fought by 5%. He said 50% of them went to Canada or went back to King George. And then we pointed out also that Fidel Castro, when he took over Cuba, only had 12 people in the rowboat when he landed. And of course, Jesus did not have an army. He only had 12 apostles. He pointed out that every single major movement in history has been started by just one person. And then he added at the end, John, the United States of America was not started by people who spoke up. It was started by people who act up. So we should all act up. So I hope that next year I get to go to Washington, D.C. to sing happy birthday to my hero, Dr. Cyril Wecht. And I hope I see you there because we're all unmasked. And until then, act up. Good luck. Stay well. John Barber.